Hey, everybody, welcome. Thank you for joining. This is Tesla Today. And the last several days, I think people are still fairly raw. They're still trying to absorb the information. There's quite a bit of controversy amongst the Twitter Tesla community. We've got Randy Kirk with us. We're going to explore some of these major topics today, which is, the Tesla's still doing very well. If you look at the stats in terms of the number of cars they're selling and being the number one sales, EV sales, but also Tesla Model Y and the pricing. But the really reason we have Randy here today is because he's an actual manufacturer who's actually done real world advertising campaigns. And we can talk to him, actually somebody who has experience with this, sharing with us a little bit. Welcome, Randy Kirk. Thank you for joining me. Appreciate you here.
Always fun to be with you, Herbert. Yeah,
Awesome.
it's great.
Okay. Okay, so Randy has his own YouTube channel. You can check him out at Randy Kirk, and he has his Twitter at is it Randy W Kirk? What's your Twitter? Randy W Kirk 1. There's actually another Randy W Kirk.
What are you gonna do?
Okay, let's get started with some stats here. I mean, I love to do this. Is showing some real data here. So this is a table. I actually don't know where I got this from. I think it was SMR. Stephen McRyan, and I saw it here. But basically what you're seeing here is if you look at each of the car companies on the left and each of their production of cars from 2017 to 2022. So you'll see what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns here or rows, and each one represents 2017, 18, 20, 22. This is Tesla, BYD. These are electric vehicles produced, removed any kind of hybrids and so forth. And what this shows you is kind of the growth over the years. And while BYD certainly has grown significantly, Tesla is still ahead, and they're going to probably stay ahead if you take away the hybrids and so forth. And this also does not include microcars, by the way. So this is a nice chart to see how everybody kind of stacks up. What I'm interested in is that, we all keep talking about Ford and GM and Toyota. We say that they're a big deal and we better watch out. Clearly Toyota's caught left-footed, gas-footed, whatever you want to call it. They're behind and they're trying to catch up, but people are still concerned that they're an issue. Maybe they will catch up, but it's really hard at this point if you think about it. But Ford and GM are way in the bottom. It's Volkswagen Group. What was your thought when you saw this, Randy?
Well, again, I come at it from a completely different standpoint, and I think it's the way that Elon comes at it as well. And that is, we need these people to make EVs. We are going to hit the S curve. I totally buy into Tony Seba's disruption theory. We are almost to hit 10% in the United States on EV sales. We are already over 10% globally. Europe is well over, and China is well over 10%. So we're going to hit the S curve. And once you hit the S curve, all of a sudden you need lots and lots and lots of vehicles. Now you can have situations like 2023 where the world is on the cusp of a recession. The United States might be going into a recession. Maybe other parts of the world will go into recession. So you can have situations like that during a disruption that might cause overproduction. So it's possible that we could have overproduction this year, whether that's Tesla overproduction or overproduction by a lot of those top companies like BYD and some of the others. I have done a video last week where I talk about the fact that Tesla doesn't have a demand issue. They're showing sequential, quarter by quarter, more sales, more sales, more sales. I'm sure they will continue to sell more cars all this year than they did last year, same quarter and quarter over quarter. The issue is, will they sell 500 to 900,000 more of the Model Ys than they did last year? Because almost all of their increase this year will be in Model Ys, and it'll be 500,000 minimum and potentially as high as 900,000. You have to be able to sell that many. So that isn't a demand issue. It is only a demand issue in so much as you have a very large additional supply coming on stream.
Okay, your video is a little behind, I think. Are you still there?
I'm here. Can you
Your
see it?
audio is talking or stopped, but your video is just stopped. Okay, so I don't know. That's what I'm seeing. Okay, that's a very good point you just made, actually. That it's an exponential curve, and we are kind of caught in this weird bubble where we're thinking that we're worried about demand because there's a macro kind of confusing things, and then there, like you said, there's an imbalance between production and sales. But don't forget that we are in an exponential curve. So in fact, if anything, it's just going to skyrocket even more and more. And I'm going to show some actual stats here to prove that what you just said is true. Let's go ahead and show that now. So you guys probably heard this already, knew this. And again, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I did this, but I don't remember the source. It kind of says something like JATO, J-A-T-O for the back here. But Tesla's now the #1 best-selling model in Europe. So if you look at Q1 2023 and you look at the top 5 best-selling models, Tesla Model Y is #1. And these are the other car companies that are selling in Europe. We are way ahead. So it's and then if you look at the growth from Q1 2022, this is it's just that's one thing to look at too. It's the growth to see what's going to happen in the future and all that. So that's one stat. The other one is there's another table here. This is from the IAA report showing that China leads as electric sales accelerate. So this is all EVs, including hybrids. So the US in 2022 is at 8%. I think you're correct when I think you were saying close to 10. Europe is at 21. That was in 2022. 21% Europe, 29% in China. And then the estimate for 2023 is 12% US, 25% Europe, and 35% China. And then this is the estimate for 2030. So the question I've got for you, though, and everybody else is, if you see that China is already at 35% today by the end of this year, that's the forecast for the end of this year, and would you still give the estimate for 2030 at 60%? That's 7 years from now. That's after multiple regulations and laws being put in place. And the demand is clear. Like you can actually see people already now waking up to the benefits of an electric car. What's your reaction to that?
So I'm almost exactly on the same page with Kathy Wood. And I think it would also, if Tony Seba was putting the number out, I think he would also be at exactly this number. I'm saying that by the end of 2027, there will no longer be any ICE cars manufactured worldwide except for certain niches. So there could be some niche vehicles out there that are still ICE cars, but 2027 is the end of the ICE age. So no, 2030, it won't be 30% or 50%. It'll be 100% BEVs.
That's a bit aggressive. There are people I just interviewed.
My resources are two of the most respected and people who have done the most work. So Tony Seba he makes his estimates decades in advance, and his estimates always turn out to be true, especially in this area of BEVs and electrification and battery costs and all the rest of these, BEV costs. He's been right on over and over and over again. And Kathy Wood, she's getting a little flack right now because her stocks are down, but doesn't mean that her information is incorrect. It means that we're in a rough market. But if you look at the information, she's been right on all along. You look at the stats that you got, those guys have been wrong over and over and over again. They have been completely low compared to what actually happened consistently over the last decade or more.
Okay, well, I would probably disagree with that aggressive statement that by 2027, it's going to be much higher than plus 50%. I just interviewed Larry Goldberg, and what he says, actually, I agree with more in that camp, which is it takes a slow, right? It's like, don't expect it to happen in the next 2-3 years, right? But then it happens quickly. Then it'll be like a very big drop. And he gives some examples of what happened to other technologies and so forth. That as soon as one, like the existing technology, in this case, gas cars, once you see it go past 5%, the electric vehicles, it goes up in a curve, and then everything else about the gas the legacy technology, everything will just crumble, right? The number of gas stations, the number of garages to support it. Once everybody sees a clear sign that nobody will buy, the used car sales will fall, new car sales will fall, and then they're all of a sudden flipped and they're in trouble, and then many car companies will die. On the other hand, I just interviewed Corey Steuben of Monroe and Associates, and that interview will come out this Sunday. And surprisingly, he said, no, it's gonna take a long time beyond 2030. Don't expect the ICE cars to disappear as fast as we all think it will. He's talking about multiple countries in the world who will just not be able to switch to an electric vehicle format for a variety of reasons, infrastructure, support, and so forth, that they're just going to continue buying the car that they've always bought, and that, that's just easiest for them to do, and for a variety of reasons, price and so forth. So,
my argument with Corey would be that what will happen with those countries. So there's a whole bunch of countries around the world that buy less than 1 million, less than 500,000 cars a year. These are very small markets that Tesla will not be putting much infrastructure into early on. So they'll still require electric vehicles. If you visit Puerto Rico, if you visit some of the other Caribbean nations, you'll find that there's a lot of very, very, very old ICE cars down there because they don't buy very many new cars. And so they just got to keep the old ICE cars running. That's what's going to happen to these countries, I believe. They will be the place where the used cars go to die when nobody wants an ICE car anymore. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll see. There are definitely people who agree with you. 2027 is 4 years away from now. Yeah, it can happen quickly. That's what happened to other technologies. All right, so let's just take a look at the other stats here. So 1 in 5 cars will be sold in 2023 will be electric, says the IEA. And again, these forecasts from these guys are so wrong so much, but at least because it's like this year, I gotta still agree it's probably correct. It's mostly driven by China. This user Jan of the EV Universe, he said, well, let's just be clear that the actual BEVs in 2022 was 6% instead of 8%. Europe was 14%, right? And China 21%. Instead of the numbers I just showed earlier. So they're a little bit lower when it's just BEVs.
Right. But you have countries that are now at 60, 70% BEVs.
Yes, exactly. So global electric car sales, explosive growth in the numbers. The share of EVs in total car sales globally jumped from 9% in 2021 to 14% in 2022, more than 10 times their share in 2017. So again, it's just again what you said earlier, right? Exponential curve. So this is only going to go up faster and quicker. We're already at that point. We're already at that break-even point, right? So just another graph to look at. This is all cars, including China is in the blue, Europe is the light green, and then the yellow is the US, and you can see that it's just skyrocketing. This is it. This is what an S curve looks like, guys. So come on, pretty obvious at this point what's going to happen. Okay, so I think we did that. Expected to grow another 35% this year, 14 million. Yeah, 60%. It's China, right? 60% of global took place there in 2020, 2022. And because they gave significant incentives, which the US is just doing now, and the laws, when they want to do it, they do it. So, okay, any final comments on that?
Well, yeah. So one of the things that you have to take into, there's two things in addition that need to be taken into consideration. Up until now, the primary market for the electric vehicles has been wealthier individuals. Okay, but that's not going to be true. So already we're going to talk about it probably in a minute. You already have the cost of the Model Y even now coming down to being lower than the average car sold in the United States. Well, that's just going to continue to drop. And it's not just the Tesla models that will be in this $20,000 to $30,000 range. There'll be lots of cars coming into the $20,000, $30,000 range. Well, when the choice of the consumer includes a $20,000 to $30,000 vehicle, all of a sudden he's a player. And that's the largest percentage of those who are out there buying. So that's one of the reasons the curve will go much, much faster, much, much deeper and get us there when I say it's going to get it there. The other thing is you've got, I don't know, 30 major companies and probably another 50 little tiny companies that are all starting to ramp electric vehicles. Well, when you get to 25, 26, you're going to start seeing General Motors at a couple of million, Ford at a couple of million, Stellantis at maybe 4 million. So you start looking at all the different companies that are going to, that their ramp is going to be hitting in 25, 26, 27. And I've put together months ago, I think, in fact, even in my book, The Elon Musk Mission, I think we show which companies doing 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, and then BYD and Tesla doing a lot more, how you actually get to the 65, 70 million cars by 2027 so that you can make the full transition.
Yeah. I think that, your video is still so behind. I wonder if everybody's seeing this or not. It's eerie. You're still talking in your video, but okay. So what you just said is interesting because Tesla is lowering their prices, the other EV makers, they need to lower their prices. And so this will just completely accelerate all sales of EVs, no matter if you just choose Tesla or some other option, they're going to go lower. And so then it becomes more affordable for more people. So at the end of the day, it's just going to make this thing skyrocket. And people are like being short-sighted, thinking about this concern about Tesla's margins and stock. We'll talk about that. But okay, so let's talk about the big topic. The reason why you're an excellent guest today is because of your experience as a manufacturer, your experience with advertising. Why don't I ask you to go ahead and explain your background and your position about advertising versus referral programs versus lowering price cuts, and then I'll share some tweets right afterward about some of the people in the community and what they're saying about referral programs and others.
All right. Well, I've been marketing different companies of my own since I was in my early 20s. I started a bike shop when I was 23. And I had to advertise and market my bike shop from day one. So one of my first ads was Yellow Pages. And that was so long ago that I don't even want to admit it because, I'm still fooling people about how young I am. But from there, I did have a manufacturing company with over 5 million in sales. We were selling and import export. We were selling on 3 continents, importing from 4 continents. And in the course of selling on 3 continents, you've got to advertise and market on every one of those continents, changing your colors, sometimes changing your packaging, changing the way that you design your distribution systems. In addition to that, I owned an advertising agency for 3 years, and for the last 15 years, I've owned a marketing consulting company. My marketing consulting company's had over 400 clients during that time. So I've been marketing for everybody from a gal who had a breast implantation plastic surgery business over in Beverly Hills. She was one of the top ranked surgeons in the world, to a chimney sweep. So I have a broad range of people that I've helped with their advertising and their marketing. I've done every kind of advertising, I think, except for television. That includes radio, bus bench ads. I mean, you name it.
Keep going. Yeah. So what's your opinion on Tesla and advertising, lower price, all that?
You want to know what I think? Okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I was waiting for the setup. I'm so sorry. So I've been talking about it since the book. Again, it's in the book. People can buy the book. They can read all about my recommendations.
So you were talking about this, about advertising and lower price before it happened this year?
Oh yeah. I was saying last year that one of the massive marketing abilities that Tesla was not employing yet and didn't need to was that there was all these different advertising approaches that they could take. Now, I generalize things as marketing, and then there's a subset of marketing, which is advertising. So when you drop your price, that's marketing. Okay. When you add a new feature, that's marketing. When you give an incentive to the existing owners of Tesla vehicles to go out and sell their neighbor, that's marketing. If you put it on television or radio or in a magazine, or you do a trade show, or you put a bus bench ad, or you put it on a billboard, those are advertising. That's a division of marketing. So I have listed in the book, and I will be doing a big show tomorrow morning after this show is on, where I'm going to go even deeper than we're going to go today in terms of what my theories are with regard to how they should market. I think the very first thing they should do is go back to the incentives. They worked. I think there's no reason not to incentivize me to go tell my neighbor, and that could be $500. It could be $1,000. I mean, it could be numbers, or it could be, free supercharging like it has been in the past, or free goodies from the Tesla store. So I think that would be an obvious one. Now, one that I think would be told, okay, let me set it up. The number one group of people in the United States, the largest market, second largest market in the world, the number one group of people that are not buying Tesla cars right now are conservative people in middle America. Why aren't they buying it? They're not buying electric cars because of ideology. They think that the government and Tesla and everybody else are trying to cram electric vehicles down their throat because of global warming concerns. And those middle Western conservatives don't care about global. They're not that interested in global warming. They also don't have a lot of pollution in their cities, except for maybe Chicago and St. Louis. But you basically don't have the West Coast and East Coast cities that have massive pollution. So they're not as concerned about pollution either. Now, what they are concerned about is their pocketbook. Okay. But it takes a long time. You can't drop your price today and have John Smith out in Old Wine, Iowa, already recognize that Tesla has dropped their price. It's going to take him weeks or even months or maybe even next year before he knows that it's now affordable and he can go out and buy it. I happen to be one of those Midwestern conservatives. I live in California and have for over 50 years, but I was born and raised in St. Louis. Yeah. And I bought a Tesla 2 years ago, and I've been promoting Teslas for over 7 years. But I understand the Midwestern conservative thinking, as well as I understand that when the price is right and it's going to save you money and it's safer, so therefore your family's going to be safer, and it's faster, so I'm going to be out there on those country roads and I'm going to be able to beat everybody on that road in my car with no problem, with no trouble, no problems. And then the Midwesterners, they're going to want the car. But I believe that it is possible to reach those people pretty inexpensively. And I would do it. I would start with Joe Rogan. That would be the first show I'd start advertising on. And then I would go over to some of the Wired programs. Go with these conservative talk show podcasters that have a huge conservative base of people listening to them. And then the ads should be, the idea is it's going to save you money, it's going to be safe, and it's really fast, great performance, amazing car. And no, we don't care about global warming. What we care about is a fast car that saves you money.
Okay, fantastic. You do know that I just showed recently Joe Rogan on his own, just talking on a podcast, talking about how amazing the CyberTruck is. Right, I've got it here ready to set up if we want to replay that, but it's like a minute long. I've played it a few times, so
yeah.
But
so he's talking
like,
about
it's happening already, right?
And
but okay.
So the conservative talk show hosts commonly own Teslas. It's so funny. Tim owns one. I mean, you go down the list, a bunch of them own Teslas, and they'll even say that they love them. Yeah. That's a lot different than convincing their audience that this is not a government conspiracy to get them to buy electric cars.
Okay. Yeah. So what you're saying is that price is part of the marketing thing, but they've got so many things. And in your perspective, they should just do everything, right? They should just, if they need to, you called it demand levers. There's so many demand levers, of which price is one, advertising, referral, social media, just all these things. And so I'm actually agree with all that. I'm not against advertising. I think it's a low cost way to do this, but I've been saying that my belief is there's a specific strategy that Tesla's doing, that they need to first reduce the prices to where it is now, is where it started off in 2018 when they launched the Model 3 in the 2020 back to the same price. But it has to seep into the narrative that EVs are once and for all cheaper than gas cars. And once you get to that point, which we're pretty well there, as we'll show the numbers, we're now, Model Y and Model 3 are now just now below the average sales price of all cars, including gas cars. Okay. once you're there, then it becomes like that's the biggest game over kind of marketing point there is. And I've shared this chart already, which is cost is still the number one reason why people don't buy EVs. They still think of EVs as these very, very, very expensive cars because of 5 years ago and the Tesla Roadster, and they think of EVs as just unreachable. So once you get to that point, then that needs to be marketed. That needs to be shared. And this is where they can do this. So I have no doubt by my mind, by the way, that Tesla is going to do marketing and advertising. And when they do, Gary Black's going to go, see, I told you so. Yes, they're going to do advertising and marketing, and they're going to do everything you're talking about. I just think that they're still they need to lower the price to be able to then go out there and hammer that home. So any comments on what I just said, or
no, I absolutely agree. I'll just throw out two more theories that I have. One is they need to do a lot more of the product placement. So product placement is like on television and on movies, where you have the car, in the chase scenes, you have it in luxurious settings, you have people driving them around. So I think that would be another big place for them to go. And then the other one is demos. So, getting a demo team, maybe 5 or 10 or 20. I've even thought maybe they could have 1,000 demo teams. It would be crazy, but you could have 1,000 individuals or two-person teams out there that would be going into shopping centers or going into venues that are having fairs or whatever that is, and doing demonstration drives and letting people sit in them and just see how cool they are.
Okay, let's go through the referral program. I'd be curious to see what you think about them. So Omar did this morning, said, I would bring back the referral program before I paid for an ad. So he actually thinks the referral program comes first before ads. Tesla does make marketing videos, but they just upload them to YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Now I include Ross's comment here because he and Gary Black were on CNBC just recently, and they were talking about how they don't agree with the price cuts. And Ross says, I think they should give all Tesla owners 1 month free of FSD and then ask them to continue for $215 a month. And the referral program should totally come back. So that's a totally separate thought. Sawyer said Tesla should beef up its referral program. So a couple of ideas is 2,000 free supercharger miles. I think that's a fantastic idea. Every new car sold via referral. And then, they used to have that, right? Which is like back and forth. If I got a referral, I got more supercharger miles. They should bring that back. 14 or 30-day free trial of FSD beta. Exactly. Any other suggestions on your side of what you would do for referral programs?
I think those are two really, really good ones. Again, they mentioned the, some of the stuff that's in the Tesla store is another thing they've used, I know, in China successfully. Maybe they would want more stuff in the store and they could, really market how cool the stuff is, that you can get jackets and hats and, all the kind of things of that nature that you could buy with your points. So that's another possible way to go. But yeah, I think people are inclined to refer their friends, but the extra effort, the extra benefit of getting some kind of benefit from having done that, and if they go down and actually buy it, you get again, a couple of years of worth of miles, or any of those things I think would be good. I don't think that the free FSD is time. I don't think it's time yet.
Yeah,
I think it needs to move up like 2 more levels of excellence. I think they're really close. I think maybe it might only be a month or 2 before giving the free trial on FSD would be an outstanding idea.
It could be a referral program though. So people who bought the Teslas get 2 months free of FSD, and then the people that they sell it to gets 2 months free of FSD. Just, little thing that doesn't cost anything for anybody.
Yes.
Now, of course, that's only the people who have FSD. Or actually, no. Yeah. Even the people don't, right? The 2 monthly. That's right.
Yes. The ones that don't.
Okay. So DRK says other programs, clothing, mugs, car accessories with less charger, tour of Gigafactory. Yeah. So there's so many things. I think even you were saying, Randy, that there's so many. Do you want to go down your list of the demand levers that you thought that they still have?
Oh, let's see. So I would the next one on my list would be social media. I would have a team, probably would not require more than 5 people. So you're probably looking at $500,000 a year of salaries. I would have them producing videos day and night. I would be doing interviews. I would be doing man on the street interviews. I would be doing demos. I mean, every kind of thing that you can think of. That's what their job would be full time, would be producing these movies. They would be 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute, 15-second. They would be on every single media that's out there. I know maybe Elon would have trouble advertising on any Google product, but I think he needs to just forget that idea. He's going to want all of these guys to advertise on Twitter, so he should be able to advertise on YouTube. So, and just hit it. I mean, there's so much opportunity out there, and it's so much less expensive than doing television. Don't need the TV to get this done. It can all be done with these kind of lower end approaches.
Yeah. So a couple ideas from the audience here. Referral program, give Tesla spending bucks for all things Tesla products. Yeah. A lot of the Tesla accessories are just, just everybody loves them, the fans, but give them some things to get a t-shirt or something like that, or supercharging bucks. Yeah, we agree with that. And I like this comment from Ethan. He said that Tesla is reaching the part of the demand curve, which is significantly more expensive per car to sell. Fanboy market is tapped out. And I think we're agreed. I mean, we're at the point, as we just talked about at the beginning of this show, that it's skyrocketing. We're now getting to the point where we want to sell more cars, and you're reaching audience who are not the fanboys, who are not the early adopters. And so therefore, right, from your experience, that's what you're doing with marketing, right?
This is exactly right. Yes.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about another. We're going to jump out before we got to pricing again, but let's go back to this thing I saw this morning that I brought up because I know you're very excited about this, which is superchargers and the value of superchargers. Some people have been saying, and I actually kind of believe it's kind of the sleeping giant thing that people aren't realizing. Supercharging, Tesla supercharger is a massive moat. It's a massive, massive business. So this is investment bank Goldman Sachs estimates that if Tesla's number of charging posts grows to 500,000, the annual revenue could exceed 25 billion annually based on usage and price analysis. So this is kind of the table that they created that showed that if you look at the number of superchargers from 25,000, if you go to 500,000, and then the column here is how many daily cars are being charged. If it's 5, you're going to get about 10 billion. But if it's 15 a day per supercharger, you're going to get up to $29 billion, right? So that's what they're saying. It's pretty significant ad. Yeah, you're big into this. What was your thought to this?
Yeah, so once again, they can go back to the Elon Musk mission. They can see a chart similar to this and see what our projections were with regard to what the potential is for superchargers. You also may remember from maybe, I think, an earlier interview I did with you, is that I think that, unfortunately, as big as 29 billion a year is, and that's great, that's huge amounts of revenue compared to $400 billion a year for cars and $400 billion a year for energy storage and $2 trillion a year for robotaxis and et cetera, the 29 billion a year for the supercharger stations becomes a rounding error. And therefore, at some point, I think that Tesla should spin it off and let us shareholders have a real shot at having some fun with another Elon Musk company that's been spun off.
So, you actually think that superchargers can be its own company that's spun off by itself?
Absolutely. A $29 billion company, it would be a major company on the New York, on the stock exchange. So yes, I think it should be a separate company. It's not because I don't think that Tesla can run it well. I don't think that there's only one reason to do it. The only reason you do it is because it would be worth more as a separate company than it is as part of a conglomerate where it's a rounding error.
No, that's interesting because now that they've opened it up to not just be Tesla's, number one. Two, they've always said it's its own business, right? Was it Drew that's in charge of that? In charge of that as a business, and he was interviewed and he said that we're running this as a business. Yes. And then three, the cost for them to do this is low. And then as soon as they add the mega packs and the solar panels, it's like being able to create a Chevron and a Shell globally with free assets because it's from the sun.
Except that the amount of revenue per fill up is so much less. Okay, so you're not talking about $100 a fill up. You're talking
Yeah,
about $12 per fill up,
sure.
and so it takes a lot more fill ups to make it this similar to a shell. So
Yeah,
when you take that into consideration, now you have to look at it again. It's
but their
29
cost is
billion.
less.
It's
But
29
their
billion.
cost
A
is
lot of
less.
money. It's a lot of
Yeah,
money. Yeah.
revenue might be down, but the actual earnings will probably be about the same.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so obviously the Tesla Model Y is now priced below the U.S. average for new cars, and I guess we all agree that this just happened recently, and nobody knows this, and only even as a handful of us know about this. So the Model Y is now the MSRP of the Model Y, the cheapest Model Y, is at $46,990, which is $759 less than the average price of a new car or truck sold in the U.S. And the Model 3 also, its MSRP is under the average price of a new car in the US. It's now at $39,990, which is $7,759 less. That's a lot than the average amount paid of a car or truck. And this is a nice table. Oops, I'm gone. Are you guys seeing my screen? You didn't say anything.
I can see your screen.
No,
that's
you.
good. That
Yeah,
that's what you're doing.
I missed all this, but that's okay. You heard me. So here's a beautiful chart. This is a beautiful table that shows the Tesla Model Y is in the green, the Model 3 is the black line, and then this is the zero. The zero line is whether it's above or below average sales price of the U.S. benchmark, average sales price of cars. And you can see that this is 2018. Model 3 was 10, 15,000 higher than the average sales price. But now both of them are below the average sales price, and the Model 3 even way below. You saw that 7,000. The Model Y was around $700 cheaper than the average sales price. And so with differential pricing, with variable pricing, Amy is a current regular guest of ours, and she is from the airline industry. And she's been saying that Tesla's variable pricing model is used to, Tesla used to most often peg it to the average sales price. And so there's I think that the Model 3 was 1 times, and then the Model Y was 2 times the average sales price. But then they changed that, and they started to cut prices significantly, and you can see that. Boom, they just did that.
Yeah. So the variable price thing is great. I've talked, I think, on your show even before. I think we were one of the first shows to even talk about how incredible this advantage is. No auto company has this advantage. Nobody else is getting minute by minute information. I mean, literally minute by minute, they're seeing what their price changes are doing in terms of the effect it has on consumers who come to their website. No other car company has that. So they can literally, if they chose to, they could go to the same thing that the airline and the I had a bunch of people say, well, it's not like a hotel room. It's not that kind of commodity. Are we trying to turn it into a commodity? It has nothing to do with whether it's a commodity or not. The Sheraton or the Ritz are not commodities, but they still do this kind of pricing. And the pricing is based on what do I want to accomplish this week? Do I want to unload my lots that I have that are accumulating inventory, or am I okay with raising my prices now to see whether they'll hold? It's phenomenal. There's nobody else that has anything like this in a large, expensive product like this, much less an auto company product. So that's huge. And then the fact that they're now the sticker price is now at or lower than equivalent models, meaning the models that have the same kinds of features and benefits. So the Audis and the Beamers and whatnot, they're actually lower than the equivalent cars, lower by far than the equivalent electric cars, and now lower than the average selling price. That's the sticker. That's before the $7,500 advantage, which brings it way down below those equivalent vehicles. And then you have to add in the $100 a month, let's call it, that you save in fuel.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You can go back and you can talk about what the savings are with regard to depreciation and whatnot. That's flexible and changes, but you do have savings in terms of maintenance. You might have a savings in terms of insurance, depending on the state you're in, and you can get the insurance from Tesla. So there's massive. This is now a no-brainer in terms of making the decision to buy a Tesla versus any other car. But it does take time for this information to seep into the knowledge base of the individuals who are not Tesla oriented. They're not thinking Tesla anyway. So we need to open their eyes to the idea of Tesla and then go, and you can afford it.
Okay. You are an Uber bull, right? You're a hyper bull. You've made statements about your projection of where Tesla's going to be in the future. So what was your reaction to the earnings call? What did you think about this volume versus price versus margins this year? What's your opinion about that?
Yeah, so in case it wasn't obvious from what I've just been talking about, no, I thought it was a great strategy. And the strategy works because it is immediate. It's not immediate for the entire market, but it's immediate for the day that people are trying to make a decision. Whether that's in a store, one of the Tesla showrooms, or whether that's on the website, or whether that's talking to their neighbor, this is now, there's some immediacy to what's happening with this kind of an approach. When you've got an advertising campaign, it's longer term. You don't see the results for weeks or even, sometimes months, so that you can judge or gauge whether or not it's actually turning into. There's a famous saying among advertising agency people. I know that 50% of the advertising that I do works. I just don't know which 50%. And if I did, I'd be a genius, and I would have I would be Ogilvy and Myers. So the price reduction in order to get, okay, here's another, I just did the video this morning if people want to see the details. So what you have here, I wrote this book, I think 30 years ago. Bicycle Dealer's Guide for Getting Rich in the Recession. The recommendation for going into a recession that I made 30 years ago was generate cash. In other words, get lots of cash in the bank and get rid of debt. So that was my first recommendation. Number 2, lower your overhead. Are we seeing any similarities here yet? Okay. After that, lower your cost of goods sold. Now, go after your competition because you've got an advantage over them. They don't have enough cash to hang in there. They don't have the lending lines anymore because the banks have stopped lending. They have high overhead because the number one thing people fail to do when they're in trouble is to lay off people because they don't like to lay off people. And I, as a consultant to over 400 companies, I can tell you over and over and over again, I see this. It's like, I don't want to lay off my people. The business will come back and then I won't have the people and they're my friends and their family. And I understand that. I had over 100 employees. I've hired and fired thousands. You don't want to lay people off, but that's what you should do. But now Tesla doesn't have to. They already have their overhead where they need it, but their competition doesn't. They're in a place where they need to start laying off. And then you lower the price and the other guy's going, wait, I can't lower my price. My cost of goods are too high. I'll go out of business. So what happens is in that situation, in the book I wrote 30 years ago, you end up gaining market share against your competition. And what I told the bike shops to do was open another one down the street or go buy out the guy that you just destroyed. I'm sorry.
Wow.
It sounds harsh. I know.
So cruel.
Business is harsh. Anyway, but now Tesla sells 500,000, 700,000 more cars this year than they did last year. Somebody didn't sell those cars. Somebody else lost those sales. It's not a zero-sum game. When they sell 500 to 700,000 more, General Motors and Ford and Stellantis and everybody else sell less. Now you start the year off in 2024 with a massive advantage in terms of your overall installed base, an overall advantage in terms of the people that are out recommending it to friends, an overall advantage in terms of the number of people that have now been started to recognize the brand as something that they can afford. And so you're starting 2024 as the overall macro starts to improve. You're in a perfect position to add another 1 million cars next year.
I love it. That was quite brilliant. I like the way you did that. I mean, obviously, Tesla and Elon, they don't position themselves as trying to kill their competition,
No, the ICE
but
cars. No,
the ICE cars.
they do. They
So
do.
in a way, I felt like, when you hear something that you kind of like, you don't always just take it for granted that they're not trying to kill the ICE cars. No, they're trying to kill the ICE cars, right? Um, but I think that they were pushed to the wall to do the price cuts. I, you know, I already explained this a few times, so I don't want to belabor it, but basically they had built 2 factories last year and they need to continue to grow the production of those factories. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts of it. There's no, decision could have been made to shutter them, wait for a couple of years before they actually go ahead and build them out. But because of the macro, with the interest rates going up, and he's complained about this a few times, they need to cut the price to be able to sell all the cars that they're producing. But I don't think it was like the strategy that they were going to do this. Do you think that it was pre-planned? That's what they were going to do, regardless if there was no recession, regardless if there was, no COVID, all that?
Well, the master plan clearly says that the idea is to go down market.
Yeah.
So they've always intended to go down market. Now, does that mean go down market with the specific cars, or does that mean go down market with a new car? Either one is possible. You can also make the existing car, the Model 3, less expensive, take out some of the nicer benefits that might be in there, make them less expensive, make the seat coverings less expensive or whatever. So you can go down market within the car. You can go down market by introducing a new car, or you can go down market if you've got the margins. Now, most auto companies don't have margins. They're already sitting there they're happy if they've got 8, 9, 10% margins. So where do you go if you want to go down? If you want to cut your costs, you only got 10% to cut.
What do you think about when Gary says that they should have been building the compact car last year? Like, this is now 2 years behind. What do you think about that? There's truth to that?
Well, so my only response to everybody is no car company or maybe no company ever has grown this fast with a high dollar volume, high dollar cost product. So when you're trying to sell something that costs $20,000, $40,000, $60,000, it's a lot different than when I was selling bicycle water bottles for $3.99 or $4.99 retail. It's a lot easier to grow that company exponentially because you don't have to add very many clients who are selling them in retail stores to be able to get the numbers up. But when you're selling automobiles, it takes a lot of effort to get those numbers to go up. Well, as far as I know, no company has ever grown as fast as Tesla in history. We're already at this level, continuing to grow at these levels. So I question anybody who thinks they know more about it than Elon and his team. If they get to a place later this year where they're not able to move the metal, I mean, they literally get to a place and they're 45 days of inventory, or they're like tearing their hair out and they're starting to run ads and do every third thing that they can to try to move the metal, and the rest of the car companies are still doing fine, then I'll question Tesla's capabilities. Now, if they're having trouble selling cars and it's because of a recession, and General Motors is down 20%, and Stellantis is down 30%, Volkswagen is down 40%, Toyota's down 50%, then I'll say, okay, everybody's in the same boat. They're all dealing with the same macro. And at a certain point, Tesla should lay off a shift. You should. Yeah, there's a point at which you have to do it. You slow down your manufacturing at some point, or you end up, getting yourself in trouble. Now, I've done some analysis, and I can tell you they can go to 0%. They can go another 20% down, because right now their margins are 19%, right? They could cut that other 20%, cut their prices by 20%. Now you've got a Model 3 after the $7,500. It's like $22,000. I don't think if you did that, the line would be, around the block, like the old Apple days, right?
Yeah.
You could cut it that low, and the company would still break even for the year. So they'd have about $8 billion if they went 100% across the board, zero margins. They would have about $8 billion in other earnings from tax incentives and incentives from the these incentives they have between companies, the fuel rebates or whatever they call them, and energy income and interest income and all these other incomes. So they would have about $8 billion in earnings from those other divisions to offset the $8 billion in overhead. So they break even. But if they continue to spend $8-9 billion in CapEx, it would eat into their $24 billion that they have in the bank. So, but they still have $16 billion.
Yeah. Okay. That's pretty extreme. You're just saying that it's
really
possible.
Extreme. That's really,
but I
I'm
think,
trying to give you the extreme case. Yeah.
Well, Zach had said we're definitely gonna still maintain a profitable, ongoing concern kind of company.
Absolutely.
Okay, what I do think is going to happen is while we're waiting for the Gen 2 platform, the compact car to come out, which could take 2 years from now, right? End of 2024 even. While we're waiting for that, we're going to see a Project Highland, a cheaper Model 3. And I've been saying that the problem that they had was that they launched a Model 3, which they thought was going to be the mass market car. Then they launched a Model Y, which just, luckily became the greatest thing that they ever sold. They raised all the prices because they needed to with the supply chain issues, battery constraints, COVID economies. They raised all the prices and it was selling like hotcakes. Now they have this issue because the Model 3 is not selling as much as they wanted to because the Model Y is so successful. So they need to separate out as a segment where Model Y fits, where Model 3 fits, and then where the compact car will fit. So what happens when Project Highland comes out, which could be very soon, right? People are seeing it already out there. They just don't want to announce it until it's ready. But when it's announced, let's say a month from now, 2 months from now, 5 months from now, when that is announced, I think it's going to be a lower price point. Then it's going to be very clear that while you're waiting for the compact car, it's not going to be as extreme as you just said, but it's going to be so compelling, like truly sub 35, mid 30, mid $30,000 kind of thing. And it's going to be a greater separation. And then both of them are going to become the number one sales. Right now, the Model 3 is number 10. Model Y is number 1 in China, for example. Right. Next thing you know, it'll be number 1 and number 2 because there's much clearer segmentation. And the margins will be very good because the cost for them, remember the cost for them to build a Model Y is already cheaper than to build a Model 3. Once they catch up with that, they can then market the hell out of Model 3. So while we're waiting for that, there's this hidden compact car, a lower price car that, I don't know, we just all seem to forget it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah, I think that there's, in the United States at least, the sedan is not an item anymore. Everybody they all want the SUV size vehicle or the hatchback. So sedans are they're kind of done. That doesn't mean that we can't get more market share on the Model 3 here, but I don't think they're also planning to build any significant additional capacity in the United States for this Highland. So just selling all they can make, that would make them happy, I think, in the United States. Now, again, in China, it's a completely different story. You can sell sedans in China. I think it will be very successful in China, and it could result in, but again, Shanghai, there's no conversation about expanding manufacturing there. So I'm not sure what the Highland will do other than make sure they move through 100% of the capacity that they have for Model 3s.
Yeah.
And there was you might be able to remember this. I can't find it now, or I haven't looked hard enough. Originally, I think Berlin was supposed to make Model 3s also. But I haven't heard anything about that for over a year in terms of putting in a Model 3 line there. So that would be an interesting thing because I think there's room for a Model 3 in the European market as well to expand.
Creating additional lines for a new version of a Model 3 is going to be relatively easy.
Yeah.
Basically, it's a smaller Model Y that they've been doing for 5 years, and they can do this.
Yeah.
They know how to build these cars. Not that hard. Not that as hard as a CyberTruck, for example, which is a completely different platform.
Right.
And they're doing it. It's happening. It's coming. So anyways, I do think it's going to be pretty cool. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Randy. Appreciate you here. Thank you, everybody, as always. Thank you. Appreciate it, guys. Bye-bye.